know it's going to kill me. It's going to be cancer. But I don't have to make it sooner than it needs to be. He was shocked, and he says, I really hope you mean that, Mom.
You're listening to Straight No Chaser. So let's get back to your girl MBZ, Pastor C, Thin Bad, and the Chief.
Okay, folks, we are back. Welcome back. We're talking with Mr. Leonard Means and Ambezi, and Chief and I are delving into this topic of suicide and how we can, or teenage suicide in particular, and trying to stop our kids from taking their lives before they really had a chance to even live. You know, we've all heard the adage that suicide is taking your own life is like a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And unfortunately, though, it appears that our parents, our guardians, and community members, we really have not conveyed that message, or at least we've got more work to do in conveying that message effectively, because we continue to hear some of these heartbreaking stories, and we're losing our young folks too quickly. Now, if you just joined us, just before the break, Ambezi was bringing up a subject, a topic we were talking about, some of the outside influence, the external influences on some of our children through the media and things like that. We talked about social media, but also through movies, television shows, and the like. And Ambezi, you were about to bring up a subject, a point right before the break, and wanted to go back to you. I didn't want you to lose that thought. You're not as old as I am. I'd have to go right into it because I'd forgotten by now.
Well, what I was going to say over the break is there is a Netflix series that was created by every teenager's queen, Selena Gomez. And the series is called 13 Reasons Why. And it debuted in March 2017. And immediately in the month following the show's debut, there was a 28.9% increase in suicide amongst Americans ages 10 to 17. Now, this was a study done shortly after the show's debut, and of course, I'm learning this in my research class I'm in myself, but when there are two things that are related to each other, but there could possibly be a third factor, they can't definitely say that this caused that spike, but the trend came up again after its season 2 premiere in 2018. And I have seen the show, and in the first season, the show followed this teenager and basically what led up to her suicide in the last episode. And a lot of experts claimed that it glamorized suicide because the way that the events leading up to the suicide were shown was through this guy who was her best friend, and when she had committed suicide, she left behind audio tapes, and on each tape she named a person that she contributed to her demise. So she basically called out people in her high school and situations that happened that she claims led up to her suicide. And the reason why they labeled this as glamorizing the suicide was because it seemed like, because of these people's actions, this girl killed herself. And because of the tapes in the high school on the show, everybody was trying to serve this justice. Everybody found out about the tapes and immediately were attacking these individuals and trying to bring them to justice. And so they believe that teenagers saw this and they were like, wow, well, maybe if I kill myself, the people who I feel were responsible will be brought to justice. Because Google searches actually spiked after the show premiered as well, and the Google search was, how do I commit suicide? What's the aftermath of suicide? And this is being Googled by teenagers as well. So the show's target audience are teenagers, and because it's a Selena Gomez show and she has publicly endorsed the show, she's a executive producer of the show, obviously those who are younger than the typical teenage, like 13, they follow the show as well. So you know, I just wanted to put that out there, because we were talking about media and media geared towards adolescents that seem to be glamorizing suicide. Now, the intention of making the show was for suicide awareness. She wanted to show a story of how suicide affects everybody. So how do you think that image kind of got warped and ultimately led to a spike in suicides?
My opinion is that there is Hollywood, and they're making money, and that's coming from the feedback that they're getting on social media about how well it's gone. I'm looking at how Game of Thrones has taken off,
right,
and just the amount of people who are watching as adults. The same thing happens with teenage or youth programming. And so I'm really concerned, because the first thing I would say is turn the TV off, but you got to be involved with your children to know that that's the kind of stuff that they're looking at. The same thing goes with the music. There's music out there that glamorizes this. And so, these things fill a need for the children. It gives them something they can relate to, especially if there's some depression and you have somebody on TV saying that they're kindred spirits. And so to that extent, I think that the parents need to be a little bit more involved in what their children are listening to, what they're looking at. It gets a little skewed as they get older, but still parents can be involved in that and give some kind of direction. I'd like to just talk about what you should do if you think someone's considering suicide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
The first thing I would say is trust your instincts. Okay, you know your children. You know when they're in trouble. I know I do. All right, and then talk to them about some of the concerns you have. Communication with the children needs to include listening to them. Oftentimes we talk at our children, but we don't hear them. We don't listen to them. And so I want to encourage people to do that. And you can do that while you're asking questions without being judgmental. A lot of times we say, that's stupid. Just go to school and stay away from the bully. Okay.
Right.
Determine if this is a real problem, and certainly if they start talking about suicide or harming themselves, you want to see if there's a plan. Then get some professional help, even if the person resists as a child. Never leave that person alone. One of the things that I see, you got a lot of parents who want to be friends with their children now, and they swear themselves to secrecy. I'm not going to tell your dad that we had this conversation. Don't do that. This needs to be the more people who know, the more people who are aware and can help and assist. And don't try to counsel the person yourself. There are professionals out there who could do that. If you have an inkling that this is a concern, then you need to seek help immediately. Those are some of the things that I wrote down that I wanted to share with people on how to deal with that if you suspect that someone's considering suicide.
Yes. And I want to add a couple of things because, like I said, I've been there. on the high school level and on the college level too. Um, Especially in high school and middle school, though, if you notice classmates or peers who isolate themselves, who are sitting by themselves at lunch, or they act out in class, or you notice that they're getting some backlash or being bullied on social media, or anything like that, be that one person to step outside of your group and reach out to that person, because even that conversation can make a difference. And if you don't feel comfortable to reach out and have that conversation with that individual, please tell a peer. I remember in high school, we knew of kids who were cutting. We knew of kids who, were going through depression, and we knew of kids who would isolate themselves or hang out with other kids who were doing the same thing. But unfortunately, we never really said anything either. And a year or so after we graduated, one of the kids who hung out in that group actually ended up committing suicide. So just do your part, speak up, try to make people feel like they have one person at least as well.
Mr. Means, let me ask you another question regarding suicide attempts. I know that you quoted some statistics earlier that the attempts were up as well as the actual successful completion of the act. But let me ask you this. Are there statistics that discuss the attempt to do it again when that person is not successful? What are the odds are if your child or your cousin or your friend tries to kill themselves once that they will try it again?
Actually, I do have that right in front of me. It says 40% of persons who complete suicide have made previous attempts. Nine out of 10 people who attempt suicide and survive do not go on to complete suicide at a later date. And so the thought is that there 40% of people who actually have had previous attempts at suicide tend to complete it when they do complete that.
Wow. Right. And so with that in mind, is there a way to make the environment in the home and other places as suicide proof as possible? I know that sounds like a stupid question, but is that possible? And what is the method that boys use to try to commit suicide versus girls? And then what are the methods that are used in successful suicides, boys versus girls, if you have that information?
Yeah, the boys generally commit suicide in physical ways.
Mm-hmm.
The thinking is that usually females or the girls or women will use pills or some kind of drug, and that'll be the way that they. But the boys, the men, young men, generally physical ways, shooting themselves, cutting themselves, those kinds of things. Jumping off of buildings, bridges. Those are the kinds of ways that they had chosen to kill themselves.
Now, for the individual that is not successful in killing themselves, does that also create additional trauma for them or additional stress as you are trying to help them to work through their issues? Do they kind of consider themselves, I'm a failure at whatever it is, football, baseball, or just being a student, and then I couldn't even kill myself? Does that create an additional layer of pressure for that young person?
No, because most of the time and I mean, may well do that if they're not has some kind of intervention, but most of the time, if there's a suicide attempt, it has been intervened upon, and help is already in progress. So people are aware. And people are seeing that just